Today's topic is marijuana, and I'm here with Dr. Stephen Ross, who's the head of addiction psychiatry at NYU Tisch Medical Center. We are both on faculty at NYU Langone Medical Center. And welcome, Steve. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Marijuana has been around for thousands of years. How does it work scientifically?
Well, marijuana acts throughout the brain and throughout the body. There are what's called cannabinoid receptors that are specific receptors that the marijuana molecule binds to. The psychoactive components bind to it. So for instance, in the heart, marijuana can increase heart rate, blood pressure acutely. In the lungs, it can dilate blood vessels.
Which means relax them.
Exactly.
Open up.
And in the brain, it acts throughout the brain, all the way from the back of the brain, the cerebellum, to the midbrain, where it exerts its addictive potential and it increases the pleasure chemical dopamine. And it also acts in the prefrontal cortex, the front part of the brain, the thinking part of the brain. So it's really diffuses widely throughout the body and acts in almost every major organ system.
And marijuana is not just one compound, right? There are lots of different things in it, and two of the important things are THC and then this group of cannabinoids, or cannabidiol. Can you explain what that is?
Well, within the marijuana plant, there's a bunch of phytocannabinoids, but the two most important ones are THC and cannabidiol. THC exerts the addictive effects of marijuana, but it also exerts some of the negative adverse psychological effects of marijuana. So it can induce anxiety, it can contribute to psychosis, and marijuana has been linked to psychosis in people who are predisposed, like schizophrenics. Cannabidiol has the opposite effect. So it has anti-anxiety effects, it has antipsychotic effects, it also can help with people that are having seizures. So there are two different components in the smoke, and the effects of the drug depend on the relative concentration of these two components, plus someone's state of mind and the context in which the one uses marijuana.
The drug has been illegal in the United States. It's a Schedule I drug, which means it has absolutely no medical use. It's dangerous since 1970. Mm-hmm. So the only source of it, federal source of it for legal research has been a place in the University of Mississippi, and it's under the control of the National Institute of Drug Abuse. What has that led to in terms of our knowledge of it or our lack of knowledge of the medical effects of marijuana? And what are some of the medical effects that it's being used for, at least anecdotally?
Yeah. Well, marijuana as a medicine has been described for thousands of years, first in China and then in India. It was used for pain syndromes, people that needed to gain weight. And actually, marijuana is available in a pill. THC is available in a pill. It's a drug called Marinol. It's been available since the mid-90s, and it's available for people that have refractory nausea from chemotherapy, cancer patients, and patients that have AIDS that have lost too much weight.
And that's one component. I think it's confusing to people. There's marijuana, which is the plant, and you smoke it, and there's lots of stuff in it. Yeah. And then there's one compound, one component, purified whatever that you can take. And
that's
of course
THC.
That's THC, and that's the kind of thing that the FDA finds easier to study because it's one thing, and they can do studies on it. Whereas, how do you do studies on herbs, plants? It's the same problem with other things.
Well, that's been the hard part in terms of studying the plant and getting permission to study it for therapeutic benefit. Marinol was studied as a single oral pill, but to get approval to smoke a plant-derived compound for a therapeutic indication has been very hard to get approval. So the research isn't there for us to know how therapeutic marijuana is or necessarily how harmful it is. So there's actually a fair amount of data on the harm, but we don't know the therapeutic utility because the research isn't there.
What are the things that people use it for, just in general?
You mean therapeutically?
Therapeutically.
Well, it has a whole host of therapeutic indications. I mentioned cancer patients. Right. I mentioned AIDS patients. It's useful for glaucoma. It has anti-inflammatory properties, and sometimes people use it for that. It has neuroprotective properties. It's been used for hundreds of years for a variety of ailments, psychological ailments. Pain is a big one as well.
Pain, and I saw spasticity for people who have multiple sclerosis.
Yes.
But again, and then recently it's even been used in an elixir for kids who have refractory seizures. And yet I spoke to one of the people at NYU actually who was involved in trying to study this, and the big gold standard trial to see whether it actually works and whether it's, the benefits outweigh the risks haven't been done yet. And yet people are using it because people are desperate.
Yes.
So that kind of leads us to finally the end of this, which is where we are right now. We've got medical marijuana that's legalized in 20 states and the District of Columbia. There's clearly a wave where it's increasing in its acceptance. And we've had decades to study this. Shame on us, we haven't really adequately studied it. So you have, we're kind of in a weird place right now, right?
It's very weird. It's the only time a medicine's ever been available by vote or fiat. So it started in California in 1996, that 50% of the voters said they thought marijuana was a medicine, just like that. No research, no nothing, just what people think. And so it spread after that, and we have a smokable plant as a medicine because the people think it's a medicine, but we don't have the science behind that to definitively know that it is medicinal.
And it very well might be. It's just that now we have the legislation that's pulling. Maybe
Yes.
maybe it's ahead of the science.
Yes.
So the answer to that, I guess, is catch up with the science.
We need more studies. We need the federal government and the Public Health Service to approve therapeutic trials of marijuana so we can know whether it's therapeutic or not.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Stephen Ross. That was a really interesting discussion.
Thank you.